It is 11:59. You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media with me, Mario Mukonda. The Bill of Rights contained in Chapter 2 of the final Constitution guarantees all South Africans basic human rights. Everyone has the right to life, equality, human dignity, and privacy. Other rights include education, housing, freedom of expression, citizenship, and more. But how much do young South Africans really know about their rights? And what is government doing to ensure that these rights are enforced? Joining me for today's panel discussion is Wits University SRC President Cebolenkosi Khumalo and youth activist at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Irfaan Mangera. Assalamu alaikum and good day to both of you. Thank you for joining me.
Assalamu alaikum and good day to your listeners. And thank you so much for having us.
Well, welcome to the show. I would like to start off by asking, because since yesterday was Human Rights Day, well, it's Human Rights Day now, but it used to be known as a Sharpeville Day. So I'd like to start by asking both of you, what does Human Rights Day mean to you as a South African? Let's start with you, Cebolenkosi.
Thank you very much for having us. As a SRC president, Human Rights Day, particularly in the position that we are in, it means students must have access to the basic rights that are provided by the Constitution. First, being the fact that they must be able to register so that they can access the education. Secondly, they need to have dignified places where they can be accommodated. This is at the center of the discussion because currently we're having an accommodation crisis. We're having majority of our students sleeping in the libraries, sleeping in the toilets. And this is due to the fact that NSFAS has N+2 rule, and it's affecting even the students that have passed properly all these previous. And also bursaries such as GSRA have not responded to students, and our students are finding themselves forced to sleep in the libraries, meaning they are denied a basic right. And thirdly, it speaks to students having access to food, to toilet on campus. And this speaks to some of the programs we have hosted, such as the Pet Drive campaign. What we are working on is to ensure that sanitary towels are free in all institutions of higher learning throughout the country. And we are doing this by being an example as the Wits University SRC, as we've launched one of our programs last week. And fourthly, to ensure that students who are denied NSFAS because they are seen as being to NSFAS, but in practical terms, they are too poor to afford Wits fees. They can have food. So what we do, we collect food packages from companies, then we sponsor students. So as an SRC president, that's what it means for us when we speak about human rights. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm going to get back to you, Cebolenkosi, regarding the students and their sleeping, and basically they are being denied their basic human rights. Irfaan, what does human rights mean to you as a South African?
Thank you so much, Miriam. Let me first start by saying, absolutely, I agree with fellow comrade that student issues and those human rights are very, for me, that's important because I started off as a student activist. But, let me go on to say that for me now, in my current context, we work in communities across multiple areas in the province and perhaps around the country where Human Rights Day and perhaps this International Day for the elimination of racial discrimination is about ensuring that people have their rights to dignity met, they are treated fairly and equally, that young people and particularly children have access to food, water, quality education. In addition to that is ensuring that communities are safe places where we're tackling issues of gender-based violence, where young people and particularly women are abused and we need to find ways to tackle these issues. These are rights issues. The points around the right to life. We, for example, in Orange Farm, have had a young person in school going age who had fallen into a pit toilet, not a pit toilet, a community drain that was left open. And it's a matter of respecting that life and honoring that life, because it shouldn't be that life comes at or our lives are so cheap that we just pass it by as if that's a norm. Beyond that, I think the rights to healthcare, quality healthcare, some of our work at Kathrada Foundation and the networks and movements that we form part of have spoken to the issue of our hospitals still remaining closed. When I spoke earlier, I mentioned education and quality of education. At a basic education level, school dropout has increased tremendously in the last few years, but it has been a trend in South Africa. So working with people like the Zero Dropout campaign is how do we amplify this so that institutionally and using the constitution, we hold those to account for what they're doing to make sure that young people are not dropping out of school. I like what Comrade said around period poverty. We've been doing, or we had run a campaign around menstrual health. So providing and ensuring that young women receive the necessary support so that they don't go without menstrual products that should be a basic and accessible material. I think my scope of work allows me to understand youth issues and the human rights abuses or the lack of human rights enforcement across the board. But particularly working here and in this last week, our work has been around anti-racism and how institutionalized and structural racism still continue to exclude and discriminate against people. So we've worked with a number of young people in schools and in the sporting fraternity, as well as a movement tackling issues around xenophobia. Because for me, the day itself is not necessarily a celebratory day. It's a day of commemoration and reflection and of understanding the pain and healing work that still needs to be done in order to achieve justice and fairness in this country.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, now, speaking to the rights that you've just mentioned, especially that of education, I'd like to come back to Cebolenkosi when you mentioned that students are sleeping outside. So that obviously contradicts their basic human right as having the right of education and the right of housing. Basically, the students cannot get the education and they cannot get their housing, all because of institutions such as NSFAS. Now, do young people know and understand their rights? And if they do know and understand their rights, can we still have a situation like what we're currently facing at the moment?
Thank you. Young people clearly understand their rights. Here, the issue is that first we must, I want to just agree with my colleague to say there is nothing to celebrate here. There is a failure of institutions of higher learning, including the Department of Higher Education, to realize that majority of the students that go into institutions of higher learning need accommodation. So the same way that they grant the privileges to places such as your Stellenbosch, which have a town dedicated into student housing, is the same privilege that must be given to institutions such as Wits University, UJ, UNISA. Then in that way, we create a town that will accommodate students. Because, for example, at Wits, around 41,000 students, 28,000 of them have indicated that they are in need of accommodation to be housed around Johannesburg. But the university itself can only cater to 6,000 students, which is a failure. Previously, we have tried to negotiate with the city to say, look, because we understand that there is a right to student housing? Can they give access to land to some institutions upon agreements? We understand that there is some tariffs and monies that must be paid, but can they be that agreement to say places such as Braamfontein, can they be declared as student areas, then they belong to institutions such as UNISA, Wits and UJ and other colleges around. In that way, you are increasing the capacity. You're making it easy for NSFAS to find places that they can pay for. Even the rates at which the places are going to be charging students are going to be student-based, based on what NSFAS is recommending. So with what I've mentioned, I've learned all this through the students that have deployed me, meaning students are very clear on understanding their human rights. Government is the one that is not on what they are doing, and institutions of higher learning are refusing to ensure that these rights are implemented. Thank you.
Right, Irfaan, what are your thoughts? Do young people know and understand their rights?
I think there's a yes and no answer here, and I'll explain why. I'd say yes, firstly, because I work with young people. We have 25 youth activist clubs now across the province, many more coming up in the next few years based on our progression. And in each area, we find that young people are interested, they desire for change, they want to solve these issues that they find in their communities. But again, it links to the structural challenges that we have in this country around what excludes them from, one, participating, but also just accessing resources enough so that we tackle those issues. And oftentimes we assume that young people are lazy and just apathetic. But the reality is that given the work that I've been doing now for the last 3 years, we've seen that that's not the case. However, I think the challenge with the no answer is that the system, perhaps the education system rather, to be more specific, has not adequately explained and introduced these topics as a point of reference for South Africans to understand, one, the history of human rights. So when it is covered, it's covered at a very face value level, a level where we're not actually engaging on why human rights matter, what is the adverse effect of not having this right, who is affected, and so on. So the critical lens around understanding human rights in reference also to the Constitution is not there. I had to reflect on my own schooling to say that, if it wasn't for the work and activism at student level, at other organizations, I would not have understood these issues better. So our system of education and training really hasn't been there to the extent that it develops this consciousness. But beyond that, I think that the response, there's the element of, yes, understanding the rights, but the responsibilities that come with those rights. And it's something that I think all of us collectively have to think about, because if we are to build, if we are to develop and change the structural nature of these of the society, we'll have to be able to reflect on what is each of our responsibility in doing so. So at a community level where I work, is what kind of structures and organizations do we have in place that help us address some of these challenges? So the one I relayed earlier around school dropout, 40% of young people who start grade 1 end up dropping out of school by the time that year finishes, and it's a shocking stat. But what can community organizations do to help alleviate the burdens and pressures on these young people and the families within that community to solve these issues? What responsibility do we bear as then the citizens of that area? Because that then brings into the question of, sure, what businesses are around and how do we contribute towards and making sure that a young person doesn't have to travel such long distances or over such unsafe, often unsafe spaces to get to school. What can we do to alleviate the burden of the school teachers and principals to create after school courses to support the kind of informal learning that must take place around giving young people the necessary infrastructure to play and learn and develop their skills. So I think that approach then allows us to then give communities and more and more people the agency to recognize the responsibilities that come with rights.
Mm-hmm. Right. So much to learn and unlearn here, especially when it comes to knowing why Human Rights Day is important. And it's not just about, hey, happy Human Rights Day. And today we're going to be talking about your favorite right. My favorite right is the right to freedom of expression. When it comes to our level of education, or rather our education system in school, it's like somehow it's like things are just brushed under the carpet and made less important, but it definitely needs to be taught in a different way. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'd like to talk about the trends, the trends over the past few years, and how do these trends affect youth apathy or lack of confidence in the system of a democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Camps in Syria or orphanages in Yemen, the eyes of the needy speak volumes with just one glare. We know what it's like to be at ground zero with food essentials, clothing and blankets, fresh water portal trucks, and even on-site navigators. We use every cent to better their tomorrow. Become part of our journey to bring relief to all. Go to www.ashrafulaid.org or call us on 011 809 8181. Ashraful Aid, under the auspices of Maulana Suhail Wadi.
Babu, why don't you loosen your belt a bit more?
But why now?
Well, it's very tight, blocking air to your brain.
Haju, this is only a start. I need to tighten up a bit more. Funds are tight and the cost of living is high.
Funds are not tight. It's your haram insurance which is tightening our barakat.
Okay, Haju. I will call my insurance friend tomorrow.
Maybe I must tighten up on my cooking from now on too.
No, Haju, we don't need to tighten up. It's okay. Look, I'm even throwing away my belt.
Don't tighten your belt. Change your insurance. Leaving Riba Insurance is easier than you think. Call Amana IFS for all your personal and commercial takaful needs. 0861 786 393. Amana, leave Riba for good. Amana IFS is a registered financial services provider.
Thousands of Syrian Palestinian refugees and Lebanese children do not have access to education. Aman means safety and is a school that provides formal education from kindergarten to grade 9. Africa Muslims Agency aims to provide 650 children with education that will change the trajectory of their lives and their families' lives. Fulfill your intention by fulfilling their dreams. Donate 16,000 Rand per child or any amount. Go to africamuslimsagency.co.za or call us on 011 834 8685. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Give charity without delay, for it stands in the way of calamities. For child-headed households in Bloemendal in the Eastern Cape, the daily diet consists of white bread and a carton of cheap juice or sugar water, known locally as the poppy water diet. Make a difference to that one child or family. The Al-Fida Foundation has over the past 13 years worked on the ground and gathered the largest database in the Eastern Cape region of Muslim zakah recipients. Phone our offices at 041 484 1288 or visit our website at www.alfida.co.za. The Al-Fida Foundation, your social investment partner in the Eastern Cape.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media with me, Mariam Mukwanda. And on today's panel discussion, we are talking about the Bill of Rights, or rather human rights, as yesterday was Human Rights Day. And do young people know and understand our human rights? And is the government doing enough to ensure that they are enforced? And my guests are Wits SRC President Cebolenkosi, as well as Irfaan Mangera. And Irfaan, since I see you're the only one online right now, I'm not sure what happened to Cebolenkosi. Looking at the trends over the past few years, there has been a systematic decrease in youth participation in elections, and we spoke about this during the election period. Does this reflect youth apathy or a lack of confidence in the system of democracy to meet their needs?
Yes, yes, and indeed we have spoken about this, and in fact, this weekend I just was on a leadership seminar that spoke about the pitfalls and challenges of democracy and how across the continent how democracy is quite different, given the history of oppression that us in the continent has faced. Young people are not necessarily apathetic. I think they are expressing their political rights via their voice and their lack of participation as well. I think given the lack of responses, particularly the economic transformation that we need, we've seen that so many young people sit at a local level hopeless and helpless, feeling that there's no jobs, there's no support for them, for their small businesses or their creativity. And this is a reflection on the state unable to deliver. And it's one that is intertwined in history, but also in the present, because when you see so many acts of corruption happening in front of you, you get disheartened at the fact that nothing is changing. The system is not helping me. And I think the adverse of this is that in respect of that, while young people bear this brunt, they still go on to support their families, find ways to support their communities. You see it whether it's in sport or cultural and recreational activities. You see it in education. I mean, our youth clubs currently, we don't financially support youth, but we give them tools and training to go out and do activism work. They run their own after school programs. They run campaigns for service delivery and so on, even though they see all the political challenges around them. In fact, last year when we spoke, I said we had election observers. We had people who want to be part of the system and contribute to ensuring that things are safe, they're free, they're fair. But some of those same observers said we're not going to vote because the same parties that we have in these communities don't address our needs. And in the same high example I gave last year of the library being there, built since 2018, not delivered. So youth there actively campaign, actively form part of community projects, feeding programs. But on the flip side is that they said we don't have the faith and trust in the system and the people who are attributed to the system, whether it was the local ANC councillor, the DA, the Action SA groups that came there to try to score political points, because young people can see past this. So I think the discussion also must move towards what is the alternative? Where do young people find themselves or form power to address these challenges? That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be super loyal to a political party. And the young people are showing this, is that we don't necessarily have to be a member of an organization to be political and to be actively involved in ensuring that our human rights are collectively met and that basics are delivered. I mean, these are bread and butter issues. These are water delivered to municipalities, electricity. It's the price of fuel and bread that people talk about day to day. So I think it's just the point around the alternative and what young people are doing in response to a system that is not really adequately addressing their needs.
Mm-hmm. All right, Cebolenkosi, what are your thoughts regarding the youth participation, the decrease of the youth participation?
Please come again.
Looking at the trends of the last few years, there's been a systematic decrease in youth participation, especially in elections. Now, does this affect youth apathy or lack of confidence in the system of democracy to meet their needs?
Yes, first, I think we have to be honest with our societies and the government and all the institutions that exist in the country. Over the years, we have seen institutions are meant to be serving people. And we can easily start with hospitals. Look at Baragwana, the once so-called best hospital that existed in the world. If you look at it today, it's not well maintained, it's not taken care of, and some of the infrastructure seeing on its own. And this shows that the government doesn't have the capacity, government have the vision of a South Africa they don't want, because you are failing to take care of a simple hospital as Baragwana. It means basic rights of your own people. Secondly, we go into institutions of higher learning, or we even go into institutions of lower learning, primary schools. There's been a failure over the years to blend private schools and public schools, because what we're seeing is that people that are attending in private schools are the ones that are given an opportunity to attend in varsity most of the times. And then with the public schools, because the pass rate is put as a 30%, it means the direct attempt to reduce the number of students, majority that are black, that are in public schools, that should go to varsities. And then in another way, they are forcing them to go to TVET colleges. But then when they attend into these TVET colleges, the TVET colleges are not well funded, are not well maintained as they are supposed to. Because a simple thing as a skill of welding, majority of the people that are doing the welding jobs, we now get them from Asia and Europe. These are simple skills that were supposed to be provided by TVET colleges. So young people are not voting because the government has shown a failure of maintaining the institutions that were already there when we got the democracy. And also they have shown a failure of paving the kind of citizen and the kind of South Africa they would want to see, or we would want to see in the next coming 10 years. So yes, young people are not voting because currently politics doesn't seem as the right way of fixing the issues that are faced by ordinary South Africans. For over the years, they've been voting. There's no free education. There's still issues around NSFAS. There's still issues of electricity. Simple things that could have been fixed are not fixed. Then you want people to have confidence in you. That's why people no longer have confidence. That's why we've seen an increase of independent candidates being able to contest, and they are being voted in by people, because what we've realized is that people, actually organizations, are more genuine on their own outside of the political organizations, because with political organizations, there tends to be a lot of promises and a lot of lies, which is the reason why majority of young people are not voting, because they don't see the use. Because if we're going back again, the simple thing as promising jobs for the past years, the current president has been promising creation of jobs, each and every year creation of jobs, but a single way or even a commitment to say this is how we're going to create jobs, this is how we're bringing in young people. So that's why young people are not voting. It's not because maybe they are ignorant or what. It's because politics has become just a tool to stay in power. There is no genuine work that is being done by any political party in South Africa to ensure that really there is creation of jobs, to ensure that really issues around ESCOM, issues around destroying state institutions. Currently, trains are not working. People are dilapidating the institutions that were already there within PRASA. and there's nothing that is being done. There's an attempt to collapse the state, and it seems that the current government is not really interested in fixing these issues. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cebolenkosi. It seems like we have a long way to go. Even though we have come a long way, we still have an even longer road to go. I mean, young people have lost their trust and their faith in the government that is leading them. And how do we gain this trust back? How do we gain this faith back? It's very difficult because as it is, the level of education has decreased exponentially. Young people are struggling to get into education institutes. Young people are struggling to get funding. Young people are struggling to even get housing. You know, you can't go to university today, register today, and get residence. That's also another issue. I've seen the pictures, and it's very disheartening to see young people whom we call the future of tomorrow sleeping on the street corners, sleeping in libraries and toilets, and wherever they can find a place to sleep. So much needs to be done here, and our government definitely needs to step up and to step in. Thank you to both of my panelists, Irfaan Mangera, youth activist at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, and Wits SRC President Cebolenkosi Khumalo. Thank you to both of you guys, and have a wonderful day. All right. That it is 12:31. You are listening to the mid-morning talk on the Salam Media with me, Mariam Mukwanda. If you have any further comments, you may leave them in the comment section. But for now, stay with us. We will be right back.